I'd like everybody to just give a big welcome to our new Poet Laureate in Southbridge, Bill Tremblay, please.
Thank you. I don't know if all of you know, but Bill studied poetry with me at Colorado State University in Fort Collins back in the early 80s.
82 to 84.
Back in the day. And so, you know, I got a pretty good sense of Bill's writing. We had a workshop and you had to show up with a poem every week, and so I got to appreciate Bill's work. Bill's work is Bill, and you gotta love it. So at any rate, I've been reading something I think you all should read if you love poetry. It's called The Nine Gates. Do you know that book by Jane Hirschfield? One of the things that she talks about, one of her final chapters, is called The Threshold Life. And it really struck a chord with me because for me, this library was my threshold to the whole world and beyond. I read science fiction as well as, all the usual high school fiction and so on and so forth. But I've practically lived here. This was my refuge, and it was also my cone of silence. I learned to concentrate here. And even today, I regard this place as the most important cultural spot in southern Worcester County. Seriously. I want to do everything I can to promote it, and I want it to be the kind of place for incubation of minds and hearts that it was for me. I also want to say something about the idea of a threshold. I think in the broadest terms, what we are going through now as a nation is a conflict between what we want to save and preserve and how we want to change. That threshold is a threshold to change. And there are a lot of people that want us to realize that if we don't value who we are and who we've been, then the change will only lead to chaos. That we have to move intellectually, spiritually, institutionally in an attempt to balance. And this is the conflict that we see on TV every night. And so I've been thinking a lot about it, and I think that's a perspective that's broad enough that maybe we can have some kind of dialogue on those lines. At any rate, so Bill's going to read first.
I showed up at Colorado State and was surprised to find another Massachusetts poet from a mill town and all the rest of it, and it was just a fascinating convergence. Not just that, but other writers who were there, and it's just wonderful to have.
It was a great group.
Maintained the friendship
Every one of
through
these
the
guys,
years.
Every one of
I'm
these
reading.
guys has produced at least 6 books.
But in any case, I want to begin in the past because it's a good place to begin. This is called Rosary, 1957. How many of you know what a rosary is? But when we were kids, we would all kneel around the living room and say it during Lent, and you know, it took a while. It was one of the more boring things that you had to do, but also when you're that little, it was very evocative. Rosary, 1957. Dusk weighs in like coal smoke, settling in the alleys. I am 3 years old. Bill Fallens and Mame sit on the front stoop. They're 72. Her death will be the first I know, watching from the front room window when they bring the body down. My mother draws the shades. Between the cracks, the sun's glare dances on the hearse's black hood. Tough Jimmy from the housing rides his bicycle in fast loops, daring anyone to get on. Only my brother does. He's 5. The feel of his fist is bone. We kneel in the front room and say a rosary for Mame. Dad's voice intones like the priest's. The prayers roll from his tongue. I twist a brown bead from my mother's long string. My sister's beads are white, my brother's black and plastic. They know their prayers and can answer each, deliver us from evil with a Hail Mary full of grace. Their small voices sweetened by Ma's clear enunciation of Jesus. Now and at the hour, I murmur, over and over into cupped hands, the hard muscles of my father's body, my face against his shirt, the methodical beat of his heart. It's interesting. That poem's a good 20, 30 years old. And 72 used to be old. I'm 69. Bill and I have one of our big connections is in music and jazz, and hitting upon all that was always wonderful. And this is a poem about that. In the heart of the bell, meaning the bell of a horn. In the heart of the bell, in the cool brass center, I blow. Like Henry, who dreams poem sounds, refitting Pan's horn, performing all blues. In the heart of the thigh, love unsheathes. A woman sings, bruises like roses. My gal, her bronze lips, Greek and full, her growling green African voice, carrying all rivers, rain gods, horn spit. I blow the mind's quick exchange, breath for breath, how a retarded woman I knew at 84 chose to remove the tubes, the light that was in her radio waves, the words of her favorite song, turn, 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 over tinny hospital speakers, entering the vacuum where she was, the body's burden lifted, raised from the living. Like the son of a bitch, I blow Bach, excuse me, like the son of a bitch, I blow swing, Bach, an Irish scythe culling winter wheat, ship's clatter of Gaelic wit. Play me some of that Negro talk, my father says, drunker than me. I play, be careful, it's my heart instead, slow as my father's bass choir voice singing Ave Maria or Lass of Aughrim. The piano's slight, lightly bruised chords, the horns first hollow, emptying. Oil. Last weekend, changing my car oil, I pulled the rusty filter wrench out of a box of alternators and pumps. Relics of my adolescence, the boy with other boys and my father, dismantling an old sports car on jacks, finding our way into its inner chambers where gray pistons slithered on oil in sheaths of steel still shiny inside the rusted hull of the block. My father telling us stories of other engines, Hellcats and Corsairs on aircraft carriers, the Model A his neighbors gave him when he returned from the war, the one he picked my mother up in on a blind date at Hampton Beach in 1947. In the 50s, I played in that wreck behind my uncle's chicken shack, twisting the long, spindly shift from the high seat, the black frame like a skeleton around me, a wheel scattered there, the drive shaft bent and broken in the tall grass. Older, I would imagine, falling in love, the oil scent of the Flathead 6 seeping up into the summer air through open spark plug ports. I haven't read this in years. News of War. This was written when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you had to worry if your teenager was going. But it's for any time. News of War. Roadside bomb, truck bomb, suicide bomber shouts from the kitchen radio, floats across the living room computer, Times headline upturned in the John. My son, nearby, 15, wants me to find Vaseline for a bloody nose. I kneel and rummage through the sink cabinet. He stands over me. It's not there, he says, knowing my patient reach or his mother's will find it. And there it is, under soft soap, paper towels, the blue imprint of the brand, 4 generations old. There, I say, standing up, noticing again he's taller, hard-bodied, unbroken. I return to my seat by the fire. They will not have my boy, I say to no one, for their wars. He's 35 now, expecting his second child. So that's 20 years ago. Sorry, I get really thirsty when I read. Okay. So this really is a Colorado poem. I wrote this in Colorado, I think in the Avogadro's Number pizza joint down near the college. When I went out there, my now wife, girlfriend then, Robin, came with me and decided after 6 months that she needed to figure out what she wanted to do and left for a while. And eventually came back, and she's still with me. So this was a letter I wrote. Vincent. Yeah, my great uncle Vincent was my grandfather's brother. He was one of a twin. And I grew up with his twin's son. And I didn't meet Vincent until his twin, my Uncle Jerry, died. And they're identical twins, and it was pretty amazing when he showed up at the funeral. He looked really good, but he was a wino, as we called him back then, unhoused. Lived in the streets of Boston. He had been screwed up in the war, and I guess he would spend the winters in the VA hospital and then back out in the spring. I never met him, what I used to hear about him. But anyways. Starts with a quote from Galway Canal. Dear stranger, extant in memory by the blue Juniata, these letters across space, I guess, will be all we know of one another. Letter to Robin. Dear Robin, the first flakes fall past the red letters of the restaurant window. A 64 Chevy prowls the road around the college. High school kids on vacation, smoking pot for the first time. For the first time since they were 5, the snow seems warm, riding with them, 16 again, gripping the big blue wheel. They buried Vincent today, my father's Uncle Vincent, a wino on Boston streets since 1947, forgetful of everything between the war and last week. He could tell you the color of his mother's cool green eyes before he could speak the name of his one love or say how she died, cursing him like old Mr. Grealish next door, cursed every child who'd cut across his lawn like they'd stepped on his grave. Though it felt the same, Vincent told me at his twin brother's funeral, Vincent expecting to find his own name, finding only his brother's granite prayer, Lord, forgive the sinners, for I am one. Every morning, opening his eyelids, he'd repeat the words, cursing a dirty reflection of himself in storefront windows, convinced it was the devil. Riding with them at 18, dropping window pane acid, the first slow flakes taking me down brick steps into brick alleys where the lost sleep, never quite warm, never quite waking. The holidays passing like one long cold snap, reclimbing carefully, each crevice between bricks saying, go back down if you like that kind of nothingness. Every morning rising up like the recently dead do, that quick jerk, the vision more scared of itself than you are, because you know it too well. Warm sea scent from hot sand, your hands still in it, the soft skin, then cold again, the surface through watery weeds, the sun like a moon. This restaurant, the red letters, Robin, like little sinners in confirmation gowns lined up in the church parking lot, impatient to rid themselves of childhood's last hours, this year of the stray dog, the whole planet wandering, wringing their hands like my mother used to, telling me how to drive by grimacing at just the right moment. I'm twisting imaginary rosary beads, praying we'd lived to church and back. Her blue eyes don't beg to be forgotten. Her blue-veined hands more practical than the smooth skin of the Holy Mother, more deft than I remember, loaves of bread on her lap. Nor does your face distort itself. Her eyes and your smile, your body younger, less fearful, your own child unconceived, yet to be held, a grown Jesus killed out of jealousy, the festival crowds need to crucify, not Barabbas, but their conscience. Joseph's dreams of angels, the dream Vincent can't induce, can't wake up from. His devil who visits him like a sour priest who, having lost his God, finds himself outside forever. This cold shadow of Vincent, sharing what little warmth Vincent has found in the burning ash cans of Boston. And you, Robin, trying to forget the father who left you, his last letter saying nothing. Your letter this morning, hoping I can share my life. My blue-veined hands sculpting the reflection of what I might have been. My father's fists that pound on the door of his own heart, that live inside me like birds. I went out west twice, once in the 70s, where I got my famous dog Strider, which I still had in the 80s. Brought it back to Colorado. She didn't do so well on the East Coast. Out west at 21. The horses moved closer, but they didn't want to be part of my soul, despite their great warm bodies and almond eyes, despite Lorca's poetry. Under a slim moon, I tried to align my body to mountains new to me, stars of a different divination, apart from family, morphing where gravity pulled, wider nose, squarer chin. I remember the scent of high mountain grass, westward toward night always, in the back of a pickup from Needles to Barstow, iced beer that warmed by the mile, the dog smelling what she could not see. And there's another poem about music. Song. In the saxophone's burst, there is a moment when eternity is achieved. Time, overlapping time, caught behind the beat, the song like the horse it wants to be, supple, its weight thrust into the space before it, animal warm, a sheen of sweat, each note's muted spark chosen, the timbre between them, the whole instrument vibrating, the song clinging to the air about us, resting in our ears hours after, waking in the morning with a line in my head. That's the way love goes, the hook pulling as I let the words fall onto my tongue, shaping them but not emitting a sound. Bell. Originally I was going to do a whole pile of father poems, and then I decided not to. But here's a mother poem. I grew up in this big old house that we bought for nothing and fixed up and filled it with 10 kids. And after they're all gone and my father died, my mother was there for a while, and then she finally decided it was time to downsize. And this is called Cleaning Out the Basement. Take it all, she said to the man who answered the call. What was left in the basement 8 years after my father died, and she alone in the big house except when the kids visited. 10 children, and you could hear a pin drop now. Surrounded by ghosts, still alive, but grown up. Take everything, she said when the junk man arrived. Old paint cans of odd bolts and nails, the workbench cleared by her sons of usable tools, shelves of parts left to fix and repair, the Japanese souvenir .22 sniper's rifle that we took down when Dad wasn't around, standing up the rangefinder and peering down the barrel into that famous war. The junk man took it all, left the basement swept clean, the washer and dryer on the far side, where load after load went into the machines from the pile of dirty that grew with each kid's armful. She didn't iron. That was her limit. 2 loads a day while watching soaps, smoking Kents, roasting something in the oven, potatoes peeled. The girls would make dessert when they got home from school. All gone, the house sold, one of her sons coming to take her to a condo across town with 4 or 5 pieces of her favorite furniture, the worn oriental rug holding it all together. That would be enough. 2 rooms, a kitchenette, television on from morning until night, another voice in the room. It's the title poem of my latest book, When We Were All Still Alive. Lately, people have been dying like crazy. Everyone in this picture is alive except my father. Okay. Back when everyone was alive, we'd sing around the piano. My father, Mrs. Barry, McGurty, cousins and neighbors standing 3 rows deep. Someone to turn the page, to bring a drink for the piano player, Mrs. Barry, and later me, when we were all still alive. I keep a picture on the piano, all of us singing Christmas carols, mouths open and eyes lit up with red and green lights. That big old gold mirror in the front room reflecting all of us back to ourselves when we were all still alive, singing. I glance at it late at night when I play For All of Us Then, My Funny Valentine, and Dancing in the Dark Beyond the Single Lamp, voices rushing back to fill the silence between notes. Faith, no faith. I'll tell you part of the story, but not my whole soul. Not good or evil, but honest and not. The feared enlightenment, burning call to the priesthood never came. God was neither good nor evil, but honest, like a hurricane. Alcohol wanted me dead. Something pulled me from the wreck and delivered me home. Thank you.
I want to read some things that I don't read very often. There's a biographical fact about me. When I was a kid, I was bullied a lot. And I really hated being called a chicken. And I decided that I was going to try and prove to myself that I was not a chicken. So I put myself in dangerous situations. This is called Not Today. I become a human spider, inching my way across a cement ledge, wide as a stick of gum, behind the cinder block garage, 30 feet above the falls, belly to the wall, testing whether I am too afraid to live. I step wide to span a gap between my splayed feet and the water's thrashing machinery, white as hot salt. If I fall and bash my brains on rocks, the priest will say, "Our Heavenly Father so loved him, he took him to his bosom young." Gravity plucks my middle. My body bows out. Nerves behind my knees tingle. By these signs, I come to know what is meant by vertigo. My fingernails stab concrete creases. I feel the line of balance in my spine. I crab my way to the corner, see an apparition of my head on the rocks, a smashed melon, jump to ground among the sumac. What am I to do with the life I still have? I take in the abyss that almost took me. If only I could kill my imagination, I would never be afraid. I want to read a poem about creativity. It's called Animation, and it's Disney. It has 3 parts. I learn in school the word anima means soul. A film of breath on a mirror, the spark of life God gives. Sister Monica comes out to the ball field. Her cowl arcs like the Hollywood Bowl. I'm on my toes at third base, ready for a hot grounder. I tell her I'm going to see Pinocchio. She forbids it. says the talking cricket is a pagan demon, a false conscience. But I've seen the previews. I'm going. Nights are so hollow since my brothers and sisters left home. I can hear my mother toss and turn in her bed at night. Theater lights dim, curtains part. A still picture of a starry night. Then stars begin to sparkle. Animation. My heart begins to beat. The cricket sings in so mellow a tenor, it could never be false. I really do believe wishes can come true. Geppetto has put his longing for a son in every tap of his chisel. Out of the stars, a blue lady in a bubble like an immaculate conception. She gives the puppet motion, speech, but he isn't a real boy yet. His smile is only painted on. Next morning, Geppetto sends Pinocchio off to school. Honest John sings, "Hey, diddly-dee." It's easy to lure Pinocchio to the puppet circus. He has no idea what a lie is. Pinocchio sings, and the crowd throws coins. "You've had your fun, now you must pay, thunders Stromboli." He locks Pinocchio in a cage without supper. Again, the blue lady sails down from the sky and frees him, only to learn Geppetto went looking for him and got swallowed by a whale called Monstro, which is like monstrance, which means to show. The wooden boy sets out to save the family that saved him. How he changes me. A frozen river melts and starts to flow. I walk from the theater. Main Street is dark and wet with rain. A wooden boy who learns to think of others has become a real boy. I see my brothers and sister in the blurred reflection of puddles. They sleep in my dreams where I will keep them safe. I'm not anymore the baby of the family. To tell a story that gives others heart is a miracle. Some words are images with a living soul inside, like crickets with big human eyes who are only listening for a little whistle. And why? Let me see. Oh, I want to read this poem from Crying in the Cheap Seats because it has everything to do about Southbridge and also about creativity. When I walked in Globe Village, the rhythm of the Ames worsted mills, the cloth being warped and woofed with a clack and a clack, the bobbins spinning, their threads eaten by the looms, frames, shuttles, a finished product spewing out on rolls, an endless textile tongue. People were working. All the summer windows were opened in the heat. The men, the women worked. I could almost smell their sweat. They leaned out of doorways for a draft of air and waved hello, wishing they were young like me and wanting me to have my rightful childhood. The Quinnebog was dammed above the globe, and the woolen plants poured their dyes, red and blue and green, and swimming in the river, I would come home clownish in mottled flesh. All these things passed into me, and I am their loom. Endless, endless. They dyed, they weaved the patterns, these workers eating supper at 5:30 with their families in their homes on Hamilton Street. I felt they were my mothers and fathers too, adults, mysterious, smoking cigarettes. They would feed me, I knew, if I asked. I see these people in wet bathing suits on Sunday afternoon picnics at Cedar Lake, fully grown, erect, sharing their laughter. My mind has become sultry rainstorms on these bricked castles on the river. What can I do but love them? Because they impressed me with this idea. They were working, and they got $1.10 an hour. And they saved money to send their children to school. There was sacrifice there, and it meant something. And I took that in. My grandmother, on my father's side, Diana Tremblay, was a real estate agent in Southbridge. I was young, though, when she died. My father was born in 1900. 1900. He was in World War I. No, seriously, he was a merchant marine, and he was on a ship in Brooklyn, and these naval officers walked on board the ship, and they said, "You're all in the Navy." You know, and it was like being impressed, you know, like in Billy Budd, you know, and he got torpedoed. It was incredible. Anyway, that was his. So his mother was like, you know, from Canada. This is called High Requiem. We float on a white cloud of incense, arising to and falling from fires that give no light. 100 Hail Marys will shorten time served in purgatory. What sin could my mamé, she of graham cracker Sunday crayon coloring books, be punished for? Through isinglass church floors, her face appears as rusted lilies. How can a bodiless soul suffer pain? A spirit's agony is loss of union with God, the priest says. What could she ever have done? A stained glass dove hovers above the altar with a green spring in its beak. Selected from the Michelangelic palette, 9 spheres of angels form the gravity of heaven we feel as the crown of conscience. Archangels don't fly, they just appear to announce the calcium age in human bones on sidewalks. No matter our digression in the glassy red asylums of dusk, everyone takes the shock of cold air we're born into. I press each bead so hard my thumb bleeds. No one escapes the sins they're blessed with. Hell is below purgatory. Limbo is above. Earth is God's battlefield with the sly seducer. Walking home along the west bank of the Quinnebog that narrows to a sand spit, I see an orphan trash barrel with flames licking soup can labels, a smashed baby crib. My prayers reach out to those who lived and loved before Jesus kicked open the gates of hell and whipped the demons who would not release Socrates without a fight. The unremembered sinners in my blood. The word is sodality. My undocumented family who kneeled before the thrones of lust and greed. I deposit my rosary in God's bank, hoping it will open the transepts of His mercy now and at the hour of our Gethsemane. And let's see, what else? I'm sure I'm running out of time. Oh, another Southbridge poem. I was saying to Margaret that I've been writing about Southbridge all my life, and I think if I pulled all the Southbridge poems out, it would be another book. You know, it'd be like a selected. This is about Halloween, only it's the night before Halloween. We called it Cabbage Night. I don't know if you guys had Cabbage Night, but this is like 1949 or something. Okay, I'm 9 years old, right? My father's 40, my mother's 36. Cabbage Night. Old Lady Gardino jumped up from her rocker at the thump on her piazza. It was the night before Halloween. The neighborhood kids whined till their parents let them run loose in a pack. They swarmed the garden fences. Knick, knack, break the witch's back, they chanted. She was marked with a twisted right foot, the sign of the goat, her high-heeled boot, pure lead. She was the palsy in grandfather's hands, the pink slip in your father's pay envelope. Into the roads they spilled, through dry corn stalks like a starveling drill corps, standing at attention to a white full moon. They tore out the cabbages, running through empty squash vines to the walkway between the Fong house and Old Lady Gardino's. They lofted the cabbages over her banister, weaving like Apaches in a figure 8, crying, "Human heads! Human heads!" She ran out, pouring a basin of scalding water over her railing. Ghost of steam sprang up from wet angles, steps, the hood of a Ford parked in the alley. "You're all in my power," she cried. "Go, bring me more cabbage hearts. Fly!" The kids stopped in their tracks. Should they do as a witch had commanded? First one child, then the whole gang broke into a walk toward their 3-deckers. A chill crackled into the air, shooing them along. Hot cider, if they were lucky. If they were lucky, no screeching dragon clawing their hair as they tried to run, feet stuck in sidewalks soft as fresh bread. Old Lady Gardino stepped back out on her piazza, gathering cabbages into her apron. "Good soup," she said to herself. The last words before dawn. I always like to read that poem every once in a while. I'm looking for my books. What did I do with them? Oh, they're here. I want also to read another one from Crying in the Cheap Seats. Another poem that takes place in Southbridge. I think it was called the Nipmuc. There was a bar called the Nipmuc. You used to hang out there? This is Duhamel. Another book about creativity. There's a poem that appears on page 32, and I thought I'd share it with you. Duhamel drinks too much, and, you know, misery likes company, so he has a friend named Ledoux. And so they sit at the bar at the Nipmuc, where Roland Munier is the proprietor and head bartender. Duhamel and Ledoux at the bar, 20 minutes to closing. Maybe you'll figure it out. Maybe I don't have to preface. Fat chance I had, Ledoux sputtered, head between his arms, a Pall Mall coiling white. I says, is this some other guy? I figure I'll work harder for her than anyone. I'm going to be the bride of Christ, she says. My breath flew out of my mouth. How am I going to compete with that? I can't change no water into wine. I got to pay like all the other suckers. When she come back from the convent, I see her walk down Hook Street near the Guadalajara Fruit Company loading dock. My chest start pumping, thumping. Sister of mercy, she was more beautiful under the veil. She looked right through me. From another world, I guess. Ledoux stuck a shot glass in his right eye. She looked right through me, he said again. Duhamel smiled. Show her the knife in your back, Ledoux. Show her the blisters in your hands and feet. Be bold. When the Montreal Express comes cutting through your rented room like a huge refrigerator on wheels, say, this world is blessed. The kidney stone I pass is a relic, a little razor. It gives visions. A night in jail can make a blind man see, you know. The birds of morning can heat your coffee, get you to work on time. The dead flies on your windowsill, though they perish, yet shall they live to buzz again. That's what you call being a friend, right? Bucking him up. And so let's see. This is a book of lyrics, and I'd like to read a couple maybe. This one I like a lot because it's got a nice turn. You know, what's a poem without a nice turn? You know, as Cynthia said, leave no stone unturned. The Larimer Well Ditch. Okay, this is a ditch that ran behind my house. You hand in your keys, and it's over. You walk outside, you retire. You hand in your keys, and it's over. You walk outside in all this green shade against the immense wrinkles of the foothills, crowned with blue reflected in water, an hourglass running out so smooth, you wonder if there's time to clear your soul of debris before the ditch rider lowers the sluice gate to release the spring flow. A narrow sparkling in sun and moon split off into a canal that runs on like a sentence to rolling plains, yet pooled where black clouds of catfish spawn, shift shape like a bluebird flock, and flexing and relaxing, its soft current caressed by dragonflies in July. It can be walked along and sat beside and read. Its surface clawed by clouds that bloom and stretch the earth it lives on. No breeze in still August, yet the water is dimpled with whirlpools like a long row of Sufis spinning light from their balance. Time to open up and let heaven through. You are alone with your memories, every regret you carry beside this water, curving in wildflower banks. You walk all afternoon watching darkness rise to devour the trees, and things go on. Cities of people, their flashes and flaws, the many things they make that own them. The burden of what comes next. Nail guns fasten, wrecking balls swing, nations find provocations for drums. It's a miracle you don't stumble down a banking into the drink. You imagine yourself drawn through a flaming womb, a coffee can filled with your ashes buried by an apple tree with the medal of worthy owls you lusted for, stamped on your memorial bench posthumously. But you are beyond victory or defeat. You are flecks of carbon settling on branches and leaves, lifting and falling in the dark beside a soft trickling from low falls. The ditch as tongue, as film stock. What is of this world? What is of heaven? Perhaps the Sumerians learned to write from trenching ditches in the earth with picks and shovels and white-lathered horses. The song of it, a struck tuning fork in the mind that reminds us that change is hard. Change takes time. And I think for the last poem, I'll read another brief lyric. It's called Brief Encounter. Out west, there's much about spirit animals. It's in the culture. Spirit animals. Brief encounter. I crunch through crusted snow, west on snowshoes along the ditch. Winged clouds stand pearl white above the foothills, ridged in lodgepole pine, that summers ago blazed orange in swirling dragons from tree to tree. The sky shifts from silence to chartreuse. A breeze in flocked box elders shimmers, flakes down on a hump of crystal, a frosted apparition the size of a yearling sheep. We look at one another for a long moment. I can't tell if she's afraid or hungry. What do I look like to her? A walking stump? I turn east where the ditch divides into stubble cornfields. A minute passes before her black nose sticks out from a juniper bush. She must have crossed ice, run behind and past me, quiet as fog, calm yet curious about another animal abroad in the same winter, hunting different sustenance. She and I inside, blizzard winds so cold my lips crack. She writes herself in my breath. I hold her like part of myself I hardly ever see. We almost made the deadline. At any rate, I've got a million of them.
Thank you everybody for coming, and we really appreciate your presence, and
Yes,
we're certainly
thank you for
grateful to
coming.
the two Bills being here this evening and reading, but especially our first reading as Poet Laureate. It's very significant for
Yeah.
us, and thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
everybody for coming.
Absolutely. Absolutely.